And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today is May the 7th, the 127th day of this new year. Just 238 days, man, the year's over with, and we'll go do it again. Well, it is quite an interesting date, marked by several awareness days and quirky holidays. National Cosmopolitan Day, National Homebrew Day, World Password Day. It's national holidays. There's various types around the world. Kazakhstan, we got Defender of the Fatherland Day. Dien Bien Phu Victory Day in Vietnam. On this date in 1718, New Orleans was founded by Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne de Bienville. 1915, the RMS Lusitania was sunk by a German submarine. On this date in 1945, the Germans signed an unconditional surrender to end World War II. So there's quite a few interesting things on this particular date. Well, from there, let's see what stories we have in the news. China has ordered firms to ignore the U.S.-Iran sanctions, and they've dared us to enforce the crackdown. Well, okay, there we go. A new directive issued by China's Commerce Ministry on Sunday invoked a 2021 blocking statute that prohibits firms from complying with foreign sanctions deemed illegitimate. The order applies to several Chinese refiners accused by the U.S. of buying Iranian crude oil, including major independent processors known as teapot refineries. The move represents a shift from years of opaque workarounds to more explicit state-backed resistance. Beijing is signaling it's not going to cooperate with U.S. efforts to cut off a key source of revenue for Iran. According to a senior research analyst for the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, it's unprecedented. It's a major escalation in terms of China's response to U.S. economic statecraft. It's a measure of defiance by Beijing. It comes as the Trump administration intensifies its sanctions campaign, targeting Chinese refiners and warning financial institutions they could face penalties for facilitating oil transactions between Iran and China. It could actually turn into World War III before we get done. Well, there's a video that shows a father fatally shooting an illegal immigrant who attempted to carjack the family car. It's a family of 8. They were at a gas station here in Texas. The illegal immigrant from Mexico was shot and killed by a Texas father during a carjacking attempt. Involved his family of 8, including a baby. The Garland Police Department said at about 3:30 in the afternoon on Sunday, the officers responded to a crash involving a car that hit 2 other vehicles. The official said the driver of the car was at fault, identified as Jose Ramirez, 30, parked at a nearby gas station, was unsuccessfully attempting to carjack some cars by force in the parking lot. Then he ran across the road to a convenience store parking lot where he tried to forcefully take the father's car. Surveillance video obtained by the affiliate Fox 4 Dallas showed Ramirez yelling and yanking the father out of the driver's seat and forcefully trying to get inside. Small child seen running from the back seat as the family scrambled to escape the car. Ramirez was then seen closing the doors and sitting inside on the driver's side as the father opened fire from the passenger seat. Ramirez at that point was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. No other injuries were reported. Officials said the father stated the vehicle was cooperative with the investigators. No charges are being considered against him, which was amazing because if our local congresswoman got involved, there would immediately been a murder charge brought against him because she worships the ground that the undocumented immigrants walks on. When I went through with an issue as a disabled veteran, she told me very clearly that the needs and wants of undocumented immigrants are much more important to her than those of people who serve this country. Well, a Muslim-only event at a Texas water park was canceled after Governor Abbott threatened to pull $530,000 in state grants. The Muslim-only event at a taxpayer-funded Texas water park has been canceled following criticism and threats by Governor Abbott to pull public safety grants. Local Islamic group had rented out the Epic Waters indoor water park at Grand Prairie for its annual Dallas-Fort Worth Epic Eid celebration on June 1st. Representatives for both the water park and the city of Grand Prairie sent a statement to Fox News on Wednesday confirming the event's canceled. The statement said after further review and in the best interest of the city of Grand Prairie, the June 1st Eid or EID event at Epic Waters Indoor Water Park has been canceled. The flyer for the event originally stated the gathering was a Muslim-only event that required a very modest dress code. The group later updated the poster by removing the phrase Muslim-only event, replacing it with modest dress only, and changed from Muslim only to all are welcome. Amid the backlash, the organizer of the event, Lena Knight, said the event was about creating a space where individuals and families, particularly those who value modest dress and modest environment, can come together and enjoy a recreational setting comfortably. Well, they have to get it through their head that at the same time they're screaming for inclusion, they can't be exclusive. Well, Rutgers is pulling its graduation speaker after his anti-Israel social media post drew a student backlash. Rutgers University has pulled the plug on a planned graduation speaker after criticism of Israel sparked backlash, prompting the school to reverse its course. The move came after Rami Alganador, CEO of the biotech company Arcelix, the university alumnus, used his social media account to accuse Israel of committing war crimes and offer other anti-Israel messages. He's also served as the executive producer of the documentary about a young Palestinian girl who was killed by the Israeli Defense Force. He was slated to speak at the May 15th convocation address at the School of Engineering before the decision was rescinded, according to a report from the Associated Press. A Rutgers spokesperson said in a statement to the AP the university changed course after learning that some graduating students would not attend the graduation ceremony due to concerns about the invited speaker's social media post. But the spokesperson declined to identify which post prompted that decision. Neither a contact for Rutgers nor the speaker immediately responded to Fox News. Well, we don't need more problems than we got, and that certainly would have brought them some more. Well, Seattle council members touted the black budget, calls from black residents to form the most powerful political party. The Seattle City Council president said she works with two budgets, her districts and the black budget, urged black residents to unite as the most powerful political party in Seattle. Joey Hollingsworth, president of Seattle City Council and representative of District 3, told attendees at the State of Africa Town 2026 conference how she advocated for the black budget to be reflected in the city's general budget. The public town hall focused on advancing Seattle's black community was held in late February. But Hollingsworth's remarks, mentioned by Seattle talk show host Jason Rantz, she was adamant that the rights and needs of the black community is more important to her than that of the city. Well, Julianne Howe has rocked a leopard print snakeskin bikinis during a tropical getaway to Fiji. She certainly turned heads while embracing the island life. 37-year-old Dancing with the Stars rocked several skimpy bikinis and a slew of photos and videos that she shared with her from her tropical getaway on Tuesday. She titled her Instagram post Fiji Dreams, which was sent to the Cranberries' hit Dreams. In the video that she included with her slideshow, professional dancer wore a leopard print string bikini while enjoying a boat ride with a friend. Well, Cornell student says the president's confrontation is unlike anything seen on campus. Confrontation between the Cornell president, Michael Kotlikoff, and anti-Israel student protesters has sparked a firestorm as the Ivy League university faces questions about conduct and free speech. Ezra Gelperin, Cornell class of 2027, told Fox News the situation was definitely an escalation compared to previous anti-Israel activity on campus. Said, I don't think there's a university president in the country right now in facing some sort of scrutiny. But at Cornell, something like this was unprecedented, according to Gelperin, who posted he's part of Cornellians for Israel leadership, but wasn't speaking on behalf of the group. Well, it's war in the Middle East is causing a lot of problems in many different areas you wouldn't expect. Well, Diana Rossini and Mike Vrabel rented a boat together while she was pregnant, according to a number of documents. They originally rented this boat in June of 2021 when she was pregnant with her first child, according to TMZ. That outlet also obtained photos showing the two signing a company waiver to rent the boat in Putnam County, Tennessee. I've been there, interesting place. TMZ reported that a source with direct knowledge said Rossini and Vrabel were the only people on board for their 2 to 3 hour rental. They also appeared cautious about photos being taken, and while she declined to pose at all with the staff, Vrabel agreed to snap one picture, but allegedly asked that no images be publicly posted. She gave birth to the first of her 2 children that summer. A week after the boat outing, Rossini posted on IG photos, seemingly of Kevin on a New Jersey beach with the caption, "Lucky to have great people to spend this holiday with this July." Well, their hooking up has caused quite a bit of controversy. Let's see. Well, according to the news story, everybody's in America is moving to Texas and Florida. But there's one other red state that's growing even faster. Now, while Texas and Florida are drawing the largest number of new residents, South Carolina is growing faster than any other state as Americans continue to relocate across the country, according to new IRS data. The trend highlights a broader shift toward the South as Americans say they're making the move for lower taxes, more jobs, and higher quality of life. I mean, some of the left-leaning states have just gone absolutely wild with new taxes. Even New York City, which is supposedly the socialist capital of the country, has just gone absolutely hog wild with taxes. Texas and Florida, and apparently South Carolina, are much more agreeable places to live. The Palmetto State added more than 59,000 residents from other states between 2022 and 2023, based on the most recently available IRS data. And the move isn't just about people, it's also about income. With the influx of residents, South Carolina gained more than 29,000 new tax filers and $4.1 billion in income. And while that shift is likely to boost local economies in the state, there's new evidence about the spending power increasing, and it's opening up jobs and growing businesses and growing industries. Texas and Florida are still drawing the most people overall, but they're much bigger states by size and population, Even small increases add up to larger total gains. Texas led the nation in new residents with 56,473 new tax filers in 2023. Florida had 55,349, according to this new data. Well, the gains come as some of the nation's most expensive states that are run by Democrats are seeing some of the biggest losses. California's down more than 100,000 tax filers. New York by nearly 72,000 from 2022 to 2023. The income losses mirrored the population decline, with California losing nearly $12 billion and New York about $10 billion, as some of their highest earners are relocating to avoid the taxes. Taken together, the shift suggests Americans aren't just moving, they're redistributing income and economic power, which could have a major impact on the future, certainly. Well, Marco Rubio heads to Rome with Trump's Iran clash looming over Pope Leo. Secretary of State Marco Rubio previewed a high-profile trip to Rome from the White House briefing room on Tuesday, delivering sharp warnings to Iran and flashing an easy command at the podium that drew praise from conservative allies online. The trip's really not tied to anything other than the fact that it'd be normal for us to engage, and other secretaries of state have done that in the past, he said in the White House press conference on Tuesday. The briefing came 2 days before he's set to visit the Vatican and Italy for meetings and amid heightened tensions between President Trump and Pope Leo and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni over the U.S.-Iran conflict. Rubio used the briefing to defend the administration's posture toward Tehran, downplaying the timing of the Italy visit and signaled that Washington backing off the pressure campaign. It certainly can have quite a future impact. Well, President Trump has flagged fake crime numbers in the D.C. area months before 13 officers have been accused of cooking the books, so to speak. President Trump warned nearly a year ago District of Columbia may have been reporting fake crime numbers when he deployed the National Guard to the nation's capital. And now the Metropolitan Police Department's embroiled in a scandal as 13 officers have been placed on leave, with some already undergoing termination, according to the Metropolitan Police Department's interim chief, Jeffrey Carroll, as an ongoing probe into alleged manipulation of statistics is unfolding. Our Internal Affairs Bureau has completed an investigation into crime reporting, according to Carroll. Metropolitan Police Department did not immediately respond to Tuesday's request for comment. The investigation was reported. It was referred to us earlier this year from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Senior officials, including the Assistant Chief and District Commander, among those being scrutinized, according to the reports. Yes, while people are cowering behind locked doors, the police reporting everything was just absolutely wonderful. Well, a former top Biden official has been ripped over a scandal-plagued past during a fiery debate. Former Biden Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra is reportedly forced to defend his record during this week's California gubernatorial debate, as both his Democratic and Republican opponents hammered him over a migrant child controversy, a corruption case involving his former chief of staff, and allegations of mismanagement during his tenure as Health and Human Services Secretary. The attacks came during a contentious CNN primary debate that features 5 Democrats and 2 Republicans vying to replace Governor Gavin Newsom, with Becerra emerging as the frequent target as candidates challenged his claims of competent leadership. The Becerra, who served as various elected positions for decades, touted his federal experience as a top qualification for California governor, rejecting the attacks as false and politically motivated. One point calling criticism of his Health and Human Service record a MAGA talking point, and later dismissed the migrant children controversy as Trump lies, even as Democratic opponent Antonio Villaraigosa pushed back on the issue that stemmed from the Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Times investigation. According to San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan, the experience we hear from Secretary Becerra didn't lead to better outcomes. Mahan is also a Democrat running against Becerra. Led to 85,000 migrant children who are lost or fraud in our healthcare system. Yes, there's a lot of stories making the rounds about folks who've just disappeared off the radar. Well, Kentucky teen. There's a lot of fascination with teenagers filming themselves doing some of the strangest things. A Kentucky teen entered an insanity plea after admitting to beating his grandmother to death in a recorded attack. He admitted on Tuesday to brutally killing his grandmother in an unprovoked attack. Pled guilty but mentally ill in court. Wyatt Testerman, 19, entered the plea to murder, which allows access to mental health treatment while in prison under state law. He entered the plea without an agreement from prosecutors. And Kenton County Commonwealth Attorney Rob Sanders said his office is going to seek the maximum sentence of life in prison. That's according to the Cincinnati Enquirer. Prosecutors said Testerman recorded a video of the October 2024 attack on his 74-year-old grandmother, Sherry Oliver, inside her home. The video shows him setting up a phone to record before shoving Oliver to the floor and beating on her. At one point, he stopped to check her pulse and said, how the bleep is she still breathing? According to court filings, he struck her more than 40 times, including with a metal cup, and stomped on her about a dozen times. Well, this shows you law has changed drastically from when I was young. Something like this would have brought an immediate charge of murder. Instead, he's mentally ill. Well, experts are warning there's a common grilling mistake that could strip fish of key nutrients and ruin your meal. One type of fish may not be ideal for the grilled, even though it's a popular choice. Singh Duangdara, Lao American chef and food content creator, recently told the Takeout that fish fillets are best left off the grill grates. Fillets are boneless cuts of fish, typically sliced lengthwise. They're a popular choice for home cooking and used by cooks looking to avoid dealing with bones or breaking down a whole fish. He described the fish fillets as rather delicate and most likely fall apart in the process. When grilling a whole fish, Duangdara said he starts by pat drying and then gutting it. Well, let's see what else we got. The manhunt for the Special Forces veteran in Tennessee is still ongoing. The news story just popped up. Special Forces vet accused of trying to kill his wife, found dead. They didn't catch him, but it did end the massive Tennessee manhunt. Retired Army Special Forces veteran accused of trying to kill his wife is dead after the incident sparked a massive multi-agency manhunt, according to an official. And you can hear the peanut gallery in the back tuning up. Well, finally, internet erupts after California Democrat on debate stage admits quiet part out loud on immigration. Former Representative Katie Porter, Democratic candidate in California's crowded gubernatorial primaries, facing backlash after saying illegal immigrants are driving population growth in that state. That's a claim that's long been advanced by Republicans. Job of California governor is to protect every single Californian, she said, after being asked if she'd work with federal authorities to deport illegal immigrants at Tuesday's California gubernatorial debate. She said the sanctuary state policy is designed to make sure our state resources, the taxpayer dollars, the public servants that we have are focusing on doing their jobs, which is not cooperating with the federal immigration authorities. I don't know why so many people seem to worship the undocumented immigrants, but they do. All right, well, let's turn to our topic for today. You know, yesterday we started talking about something that fascinates a whole lot of people. Parallel universes, wormholes, stargates, portals, time slips. There's quite a lot of fascinating stories that have come to light when you start delving into this area. You know, if you ever saw Stargate SG-1 and Stargate Atlantis, the idea behind those shows is you step through a Stargate and come out in an ancient city across the galaxy. And there are a lot of folks that say that's absolutely correct. Well, there are a number of stories about other Stargates on this planet. In fact, there are two ancient Sumerian Stargates, one located in Eridu, believed to have been the earliest city in southern Mesopotamia. And some theorists suggest that beneath these ruins lies a hibernating Stargate, waiting patiently for its archaeological discovery or reactivation. According to a researcher named Elizabeth Vague, the Stargate's referred to as the Pit of the Abyss in chapter 9 of the book of Revelations. And there are also numerous accounts and legends that seem to hint at something extraordinary working beneath Eridu's sand-laden layers. These tales talk about individuals mysteriously vanishing without a trace, almost as swallowed by the earth, close to where that Stargate's supposed to exist. Now, there's many stories about unexplained disappearances. Look at the Flight 19 in the Bermuda Triangle, training mission during World War II. 5 experienced crews and their aircraft flew into oblivion. Moving further along, we found Nasayara, where conspiracy theorists hinted at another ancient ziggurat's existence. Supposedly within these ziggurats is the Stargate. This ziggurat supposedly shelters another Stargate from view. After it was found in the 1920s, the Nazis spent a lot of time and money investigating it throughout World War II. And some believe the Anglo-Iraqi War of 1941 was begun to control and exploit the Stargate within that ziggurat. Some think that Saddam Hussein relocated that Stargate to a tunnel underneath his palace in Baghdad. And the true motive for the 2003 Iraqi War was for the U.S. military to grab that Stargate for its own reasons. That palace is presently at the heart of the American so-called Green Zone in Baghdad. Believers often reference ancient Sumerian texts interpreted as describing beings from another world interacting with humans. That's the Anunnaki that Zecharia Sitchin talked about. In their mythology are lots of stories about people randomly encountering beings or phenomena beyond human comprehension. You know, a space portal like the Einstein-Rosen bridge or wormhole, another name for it, is formed when space-time is distorted either by the intense gravitational fields created by the collapse of a star or by the mingling magnetic forces of the Earth and the Sun crossing in space, aided by violent solar winds. Some of these portals remain open for extended periods. The majority are transient. They open up wide and close multiple times every day. These portals, according to official science, bring particles from the solar winds to Earth, but we can think of them easily transporting crafts also. It's just not yet been tested, as the current Earth science doesn't have the ability to do so. They're called magnetic openings or flux transfer events. They're the unseen bridges that link the Earth's magnetic field to the sun's. And they're made by a process that's been referred to as magnetic reconnection. It happens when magnetic fields that are in the opposite direction meet and change places. Makes a starlight line from our world to the atmosphere of the sun, which is 93 million miles away. Every day, the doors open and close dozens of times. Most of the time, they're a few tens of thousands of kilometers away from Earth, where the Earth's magnetic field meets the solar winds, which corroborates our theory that the activity on natural portals of Earth increases with the coincidence of solar flares or solar maximum activity. Tons of energy particles can flow through these gaps, heating the upper atmosphere of Earth, causing geomagnetic storms and lighting up bright solar auroras. But these types of stargates can be difficult to locate. Their consistent instability, enigmatic nature, and inclination to be difficult to identify might mean that locating one can take years. Plasma physicist at the University of Iowa named Jack Scudder has devised a mechanism for detecting the elusive, unexpected gateways. He called these newly found road signs X-points, where crossing magnetic fields running between the Earth and the Sun launch massive numbers of charged particles out of the portal, which is simple to see with the appropriate instruments and data. He saw similar patterns occurring all throughout the Earth's atmosphere after he recognized the signals of a gateway. They're seen by NASA's TMS satellite at a distance of 10,000 to 30,000 miles from the Earth. Majority of them appear to be positioned where the Sun's and Earth's magnetic fields intersect to form an unimpeded passage, causing the area to pulse with charged particles that also cause the northern lights and geomagnetic storms we occasionally observed here on Earth. But we don't know so far if these wormholes are traversable and where they'll lead, which is to which point in space and time or distant dimension. It'd be a bad thing to step through the Stargate and find yourself floating in space forever. So why do Stargate theories continue to capture our collective imagination? It's because there's something innately human about wanting more knowledge, more discovery, more adventure. And as we advance technologically and grasp new understandings about our universe using cutting-edge gear that, like those nifty rovers on Mars or telescopes penetrating deep space mysteries, faster-than-light travel may not be just another sci-fi trope, but too far out of reach. But however far-fetched they might be, they're deemed by the scientific community today, tomorrow, and who knows? Science fiction has often been a precursor for real-world innovation, after all. One day, to travel to another planet, it's going to be so mundane, we'll take a trip on a weekend to a nearby beach. Now, there's been a number of stories of unintended teleportation throughout time and space. There are many accounts across history and in recent times of people who are apparently teleported without reason and against their will. These examples support the existence of gateways or portals that, under some conditions unknown presently to us, are formed, and as quickly as they're formed, they disappear. Others seem to last, like the probable one that exists in the Bermuda Triangle. So we're going to talk about some of the most reputable and known accounts of unwanted teleportation through time and space. Wormholes and portals link destinations to other places in time and space, sometimes in other dimensions or parallel universes. And there's a lot of supporting evidence for this. Well, let's go to October 24th, 1593. Day just like any other in Manila, Philippines. Gil Perez stood guarding the governor's palace. News spread about the recent tragic assassination of Governor Gomez Perez Desmaranas by Chinese pirates during an expedition. Exhausted and weary, the Spanish soldier leaned against a wall for support and momentarily closed his eyes. But when he opened his eyes, everything had changed. He found himself in a strange place with different skies, defying rational comprehension. And what caught his eyes were distinctly unfamiliar surroundings. He was now in a bustling town square without palm trees characteristic of his homeland. But he was looking at cobblestone streets adorned with European architecture. Faces looked as bewildered to see him as he was to see them. Somehow, some way, he'd been teleported over 9,000 miles away to Mexico City's Plaza Mayor. Quite impossible considering the normative understanding of spatial and temporal continuity. The heavy-hearted warrior, donning the uniform of the guards in Manila, remained perplexed and hesitant due to vast cultural disparities between both geographical territories that surfaced in immediate view. A climate difference providing another tangible layers to his prevailing vexation. Rumors stirred and whispers echoed around Zocalo, as the locals called it, because Mexico hadn't heard about their governor's assassination in the distant Philippines. Communications like that required months, sailing across the Pacific Ocean, which naturally didn't tally up with Perez's abrupt, incredible arrival and breaking news from the Far East only hours after the actual occurrence. Well, he was arrested on suspicion by local authorities who declared him either a deserter or a servant of the devil. His claims about his improbable journey seemed fantastical until San Geronimo sailed into Acapulco Harbor late January in 1594, bearing the unfortunate confirmation regarding the governor's death, which vindicated Perez's allegedly preposterous narrative that had been shrugged off as a mere hallucination or a hoax by the orthodox mindset prevalent during colonial times. His testimonies turned out to be eerily prophetic, weighing his contemporary evidence coupled with the absence of criminal history and a strong alibi suggesting his presence at guard duty all night till his sudden disappearance at dawn. The viceroy decided to release the misguided soldier, showing leniency toward what he called the white lies painted over a helpless reality, presumably beyond ordinary understanding. Well, there was quite an enigma surrounding Gil Perez. He was an innocent pawn inadvertently caught within the folds of the space-time continuum. And whether this incident denoted a miraculous teleportation facilitated through natural portals remains unanswered, sparking the imagination among researchers worldwide, cementing its place firmly amidst unexplained mysteries achieved across centuries. However vague or outrageous it may seem at the time, truth has strange ways of manifesting itself, sometimes outstripping fiction itself. Now, from the adventures of Gil Perez, let's talk about the adventures of Eleanor Jourdan and Charlotte Moberly. In her 1911 book, An Adventure, Miss Eleanor Jourdan and Charlotte Moberly, who were the principal and vice principal of St. Hugh's College in Oxford, wrote about a strange event that was a mix of time travel and teleportation, don't you know? They were greatly respected and admired experts in their respective domains during that specific era. Jourdan had a master's degree and a lot of information about English writing. Moberly had studied history and was interested in French history in particular. Well, they told a story about their trip to Versailles Palace in August of 1901. And in that story, things get strange and almost unbelievable. When they went into the palace grounds, their only goal was to see the once royal center. Neither one of them could remotely think about what would happen next. But according to the story, they were walking along ordinary paths when all of a sudden their surroundings changed. The surroundings of the individuals went through unexplainable changes, and they saw people dressed in clothing similar to what was worn during the time of Marie Antoinette. They said they saw a shop, a bridge that weren't usually in Versailles, looked eerily like buildings from long ago, and both of them felt they were being suffocated, had bad feelings like fear and dislike starting to creep in. After departing from this location, they stumbled upon objects that left them pondering whether they'd been transported to the late 18th century. Specifically, they had been transported to August 10th, 1792. This was shown by the fact that the people dressed in clothes in that period of time told them specifically about the revolutionary activity. Well, after An Adventure came out, this supposed unintended teleportation or time slip has been a source of both doubt and strong claims. Even though critics said that their claims could be wrong because of things like misunderstanding of cultural standards or hallucinations caused by temporal lobe epilepsy, now the researcher backed down from what they said. In reality, the one maintained unwavering confidence in their narrative throughout their lifetimes, frequently revisiting the location in an attempt to replicate the events, yet they ultimately proved unsuccessful. And this added to the mystery of this complicated story, which was backed up by two respected academics and left readers with more than just intellectual curiosity. The interesting thing about their story, many of the things that they saw and reported in their book were later confirmed by old maps and people familiar with the location. Did they step to time? They believed it until their dying day. Well, let's talk about the time slip of Robert Victor Goddard. In terms of mysterious teleportation stories, the account of Sir Robert Victor Goddard holds a prominent spot. He served as a wing commander for the Royal Air Force in Britain during the mid-30s. His sheer credibility and distinguished service made his puzzling story even more intriguing. The year was 1935. Goddard was caught in an unprecedented storm while flying over a Drim airfield near Edinburgh, Scotland. And at that point, the airfield had been abandoned for quite a few years. The deserted land bore signs of disuse, dilapidated hangars and overgrown runways, and an aura indicative of quiet abandonment. And as he navigated through the heavy rain coupled with unusual yellowish clouds enveloping his aircraft, he experienced something inexplicable. Out of nowhere, and quite miraculously, the sky cleared up instantaneously, revealing bright sunlight bathing the airfield below. But now comes the actual mind-boggling part. That run-down airfield didn't appear so run down anymore. He could see it was alive and buzzing with activity. Mechanics hustled about in blue overalls. 4 airplanes were parked on the runway, out of which 3 were models unknown to him. They were painted yellow. Another puzzling sight was soldiers wearing uniforms emblazoned with an emblem he didn't recognize. Well, he felt like he'd been abruptly thrust into an alternative reality, or maybe flung forward through time by a natural portal, what we'd all call a wormhole. When he managed to regain his composure and navigate back into normal airspace, everything seemed like nothing out of the ordinary had happened, apart from feeling thoroughly rattled inside. Later in 1939, when World War II sparked off, and the Royal Air Force indeed started painting their aircraft yellow, along with utilizing Drim Air Base again, bringing it back to life exactly Goddard had witnessed. Even the RAF's blue uniform came into existence, leaving everybody, including Goddard, pondering deeply whether he somehow got transported years ahead momentarily before being pulled back to his normal timeline. Goddard's account remains one of aviation history's most uncanny episodes, recounted by somebody whose sterling credentials leave little room for skepticism, leaving speculators wondering if wormholes just might be real. And then, of course, we have the Liverpool incident. This was a tale from a midsummer day in 1996. Slightly grizzled but robust off-duty policeman named Frank was strolling down the ever-busy Bowl Street, ready for some downtime after a hectic morning shift. And as he wandered along, his senses anchored firmly in the present. Sidewalk chattered and roaring car engines and a rush of folks enveloped him. But he suddenly felt an inexplicable shift. The noise muted. The tones and tunes morphed, and even the smells changed. Like an unseen hand had spun a dial on a cosmic radio, tuning on a different era. Looked around with puzzled eyes, taking in the daunting spectacle. Miraculously, it looked like he'd been thrust back into Liverpool it was in the 1950s. The towering edifice of St. Luke's, standing tall, unscathed, pre-blitz damage. Women sporting polka dot dresses. Men donning trilbies and press suits passed by him. Previously modern stores now boasted vintage signs. Instead of mobile phones or electronic goods, they advertised vinyl records and typewriters. Even vehicles were no longer sleek modern machines, but rather bulky relics on wheels from another time. Well, with wonder, somewhere between intrigue and disbelief, he strolled through this transformative scenery until his attention was drawn to a young woman stuck on this strange temporal roundabout just like him. Though she belonged to his original time frame, her trendy clothes gave her away her 90s origin. She seemed bewildered by the retailer turned time portal that stood in front of him, a closed store metamorphosing into a dusty bookshop right before their disbelieving eyes. Well, we have to speculate on what might have sparked such anomalies. Maybe they were caught up in some cosmic hiccup or slipped through an accidental tear in the time-space fabric. Or maybe Bowl Street is actually sitting on top of some otherworldly vortex. Well, Frank's account was related by a number of people. And Tom Sleeman, for one, who lended some credibility while tantalizingly alluding to other allegedly similar incidents documented on Bowl Street. He not only corroborated specifics from Frank's whirlwind adventure, but also spun tales about Bowl Street being no ordinary street, but rather an anomaly-rich hotspot. His very own Bermuda Triangle, so to speak, silently buzzing among the daily hubbub. Well, these narratives, wrapped via Sleeman's collection, emerge as vibrant tapestries interwoven with intrinsically human experiences and inexplicable physical phenomena, showcasing Liverpool's timeless charm, literally. So are there places where you can wander down the street and go from 1996 to 1950 in the blink of an eye? Apparently so. There have been quite a number of stories. Well, let's go to 1957. 3 British Royal Navy cadets named William Lang, Michael Crowley, and Ray Baker were off duty. It was late autumn. What they experienced on that day was far from ordinary. Uncanny sensation known as a time slip. Their destination, the village of Kersey in Suffolk, is a place so timeless it could be said to encapsulate the quintessential English countryside. Part of their field training led them towards Kersey, renowned for its vivid memories of yesteryear and scenic charm. As the trio approached the village perimeter, they encountered an inexplicable hush. Though someone had pressed pause on the air itself, not a sound reverberated, nor was there any wind rustling through the leaves. They were greeted by sights that were familiar but oddly misplaced. The cobblestone streets they remember are now connected earth paths. The landscape had transformed right before their eyes. Shops that once housed modern conveniences now sold goods reminiscent of bygone eras. Barrels of herring and pickled eggs lined up outside what seemed like old-fashioned butcher shops. Domestic animals freely roamed around, while half-timbered houses added even more rustic charm to this peculiar sight. More eerily noticeable was the absence of the church tower. You would, until now, used to claim most of the sky space. It was nowhere to be seen. Stark contrast against their recollection, which held firm memories of its soaring heights visible from miles away. Intrigued but alarmed by this unforeseen displacement from time as they knew it, they decided to shake off the strange stillness surrounding them. The boys hurriedly scampered away from Kersey, only to see the mystery unfold backward. Everything returned back to normal, languidly into place, just like melting ice reveals the water lying underneath it. The staggering account found its way into the files of Andrew Mackenzie, a reputable paranormal researcher having amassed an impressive body of evidence supporting stories like this. Handpicked for his meticulous ways of data collection, or maybe due to his unbiased representation in reporting witnessed events, he embarked on collating facts about this mysterious encounter using tools his trade bestowed on him. After robust interviews with both parties and cross-referencing descriptions provided by village records maintained during the early 20th century, he concluded what these cadets experienced wasn't some hypnotic state born out of mutual suggestion or powerful hallucination, as rather elements detailed by cadets actually matched documented history. Notably present, the butcher shop at that location described absolutely exactly positioned. Equally compelling was fire-damaged church tower absent for considerable years until rebuilt later on. Whether you believe it or not, they actually seem to have stepped through time. Now let's go to December 1979. Life had an unexpected adventure in store for 2 British couples, Geoff and Pauline Simpson, along with Lynn and Cynthia Gisby, planning an adventurous road trip to Spain. And their journey took them across the picturesque countryside of France, where they decided to make a pit stop near Montélimar for the night. Found an oddly archaic hotel surrounded by scenic landscape. It appeared like a page torn out of the past, quietly nestled among nature's embrace. Immediately caught the couple's eye, and curiosity got the better of them. They decided this was where they're going to hold up for the rest of their journey. Now, this was the decision they weren't aware would lead to one of an inexplicable event that remained echoed in their memories after that. As they walked in, what struck them was how out of place it seemed in the present day. This charming little hotel had no modern amenities that most of us take for granted. No glass windows, no telephones, even no elevators. Furthermore, some uniquely attired individuals represented an era long past. Woman dressed in a precisely detailed silk gown, accompanied by her dog, and policeman conspicuously donned in World War I regalia. This set the stage for what seemed like more than just a time slip into history, but an immense experience impossible to be logically articulated. Their stay cost them just 19 francs, ridiculously cheap even for those days. But little did they know then that wasn't going to be the most surprising thing as to what awaited them when their adventures reached its climax. Once they resumed their road trip the next morning, with beautiful memories of yesteryear's Mont-Limard town, things began to get intriguingly strange. Dazzled by this unique encounter with history firsthand, they intended to extend their stay at this quaint old-world establishment on their return trip from Spain. But despite several efforts, over 2 weeks later, this mysteriously enchanting hotel was nowhere to be found. And even more baffling was all the photographic evidence that were miraculously missing from their camera reel. Andrew Mackenzie, a notable paranormal researcher looking into such anomalies, recorded details about these travelers' odd incidents. His research confirmed some aspects mentioned by him accurately that mirrored Mont-Limar's 1905 historical record, including references to existing establishments like circuses or butcher shops back in those times. So did they stumble upon a wormhole while seeking shelter at a roadside inn? The parallels converge, sneakily revealing glimpses of past eras. Or did cosmic forces take creative liberty, bestowing upon them singular yet unverifiable psychic impressions powerful enough to bring alive early 20th century visions? We'll probably never know, but they never did find it on their return trip. Well, let's go to Hamburg. Here's 2006. Two British women named Annie and Elaine were involved in a very strange event. They went on what seemed like a normal trip to Hamburg, Germany, trying to learn what different cultures could show and make some happy memories, I guess you could say. They had no idea their trip would take a strange turn. As they walked around the city, enjoying the beautiful buildings and taking in the atmosphere, they experienced a time slip, which is an inexplicable change in time. It's like being sucked into a time tunnel where you can watch or even take part in events from another time. Well, the two ladies were walking around in the old side streets of Hamburg on that fateful day when they were surprised by a time glitch. Instead of the peaceful scenes that are typical of early summer vacations, they were thrown into what looked like hell itself. Then they saw Operation Gomorrah, a bombing operation that took place in 1943 and left that city in a terrible state. Nearly right away, the sky got dark because so many airplanes were flying in it. Waves of bombs kept falling, putting much of the city on fire, which led to an all-consuming firestorm. And as this disaster happened right in front of Annie and Elaine's eyes, they could hear terrifying screams from both people and animals. Well, imagine being miles away from outdoor summer parties and still feeling heat waves that test your endurance. And multiply that by 100. That's how strong and uncomfortable the heat from those fires felt to these two very confused young ladies. Well, they ran away from the chaos toward safety, even though they were so scared they could barely move. Soon found a building that looked like the lobby of their modern hotel. As soon as they went inside to find shelter, they were overcome by darkness because they were so tired from being afraid. When they woke up in the peaceful hotel hallway, as if everything had been calm just moments before, their panicked stories about what had happened were brushed off by other people as overreactions or hallucinations. Jenny Randall's a well-known ghost researcher, listened to this scary story when it was told to her later. Said it helped a lot that at least some parts of it were true. Their stories sounded eerily like things that happened in history during Operation Gomorrah. Right from the details of how the radar blocking device at the window was used to specific recalls of what happened before and during the blaze that killed tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people back then. Well, there was a woman by the name of Carol McElhaney, lived in San Bernardino. Very strong-willed woman with strong beliefs who liked dogs, specifically sheepdogs. And she had one named by the name of Rover. And he was her royal companion on many adventures, including a tragic journey to Riverside in March of 2006. Now, Riverside, if you're not familiar with it, was a happy, carefree place where she spent her childhood and where her grandparents had died. And as she drove to Paris, California for one of Rover's sheepdog trials, she thought about giving them a call. She thought a detour wouldn't hurt. She turned the car toward this beloved city where she had so many happy memories. When she got to Riverside, she had a strange feeling something wasn't right. Instead of being surrounded by the nice familiarity of memories, Riverside streets were like strange threads on a strange loom. Buildings that had stood strong when she was a child now looked twisted, and even people who were just walking around were wrapped in this strange unfamiliarity. Something was very wrong with the world that she knew. Like stepping onto a foreign planet or a movie set. Everything around her seemed strange and from another world. The cars didn't look like any she knew. The weather went from warm sunshine to cold winds without warning. And her heart raced with fear, and Rover's frantic whimpers echoed her worry. Well, they tried to get home by taking streets they knew, but they couldn't find their old house or their grandparents' graves. Requests for directions were met with confused looks from the locals. Even simple talk seemed to confuse them, and their blank looks mirrored her own confusion. Caught up in this inexplicable nightmare in a place she used to love, they pushed against the walls of sanity until they were finally gave in to overwhelming fear after hours of driving around aimlessly. Seeing a sign for Interstate 215 was like a cool rain in the middle of a heat wave. They didn't stop to think about or look back at that strange world they'd just left. Instead, they ran toward this road that would lead them back home to San Bernardino. Even though it was strangely narrow and dark, it felt free to drive on that empty highway as they slowly headed north, till bright lights let them know that they were done with this strange trip. Carol carried the secret load of not fully understanding what had happened for years till she read about parallel worlds online and finally got some clarity. When she told Jenny Randalls about these strange events, she was a paranormal investigator with a good ear. Found a few problems with Carol's stories, but she also knew potential in the historical facts from Riverside. Randalls brought up options that make us question the linear nature of reality. It could have been a mental echo bouncing back and forth through time, showing a fire-stained Riverside from the early 20th century. Or maybe catch a glimpse of another dynamic world that's oddly similar to ours. Well, I've got a long list of potential time slips. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for today's show. We'll do one more series of time slips tomorrow before we go into a different topic. But until tomorrow at this time, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show saying have a truly great evening and be careful where you walk.